Ask anyone who works in tech support. It's not the computers that are the problem, it's the people using them. If there's one thing you can take away from these tales, it's what the unfortunate HR employee in the last story learned the hard way. Don't mess with tech support. For 5 years, I worked in information tech consulting in a rural town about an hour's drive from Portland, Oregon. Occasionally, I'd handle fascinating, complex tech troubles customers brought in. One day, an intriguing woman walked in. She was attractive, around 40, with distinctive short blonde hair and vivid red lipstick, dressed like a character from a 50s advertisement. However, she was distressed, spiraling into conspiracy theories that suggested paranoia. All ideas of engaging in friendly conversation with her promptly vanished. Despite this, I turned into the conversation out of curiosity and a need for a break from my usual routine. What she told me was absolutely jaw-dropping. She was certain her husband was spying on her through multiple devices, which is what drove her to request my help. As a supervisor, I stepped in, assuring her that our experienced team would handle her unique situation. Up close, her stylish facade barely hid her deep anguish. Typically, customers claiming they're being surveilled are dissuaded by our fees. But our team, specializing in computer forensics and data recovery, was trusted by the local police department and various law firms for expert assistance. We provided professional reports, supportive evidence for court cases, centering on family or marital disputes. The woman insisted her husband was spying on her movements, her computer, and even within her home. What's even crazier is how she'd found out. She claimed that he told her he was watching her and threatened her that she shouldn't tamper with the surveillance devices. She hadn't been able to find any evidence, so she'd been denied a restraining order. As a test, I proposed a discreet investigation by senior staff for $300 per hour, minimum 4 hours. I expected her to say no way, but I was in for a surprise. She agreed, insisting to start with her vehicle for a potential GPS tracker. She was parked several blocks away to avoid her husband's suspicions. Joining me were my colleague and our curious technicians. Here's where it gets interesting. Although GPS trackers are limited in their placement, our search revealed nothing initially. Then, I discovered a small device hidden behind the vehicle's front grille. This was not a real-time tracking device, but a system recording location data for a few days using internal storage and batteries. To put it bluntly, she had been right to be paranoid. Our focus shifted dramatically at that moment. I knew the situation was incredibly dangerous. She had entrusted us with gathering evidence to help secure a restraining order. Seeing the GPS tracker led her to tears, but she insisted more evidence was needed. We planned to examine her home and computer for bugs, ensuring her husband wouldn't uncover our intervention. It took a week before the perfect opportunity arose. Meanwhile, our sympathies grew as she revealed more about her troubled relationship. Her genuine fear was evident, and I offered to lend her a firearm for protection, explaining the basics and ensuring she felt comfortable handling it. As the date for the investigation approached, we prepared extensive plans. We arrived on the day with various tools, swiftly cloning her computer's drives for examination. I discovered Spectre Pro, a surveillance software monitoring every user activity. Meanwhile, my coworkers discovered 2 hidden cameras in her bedroom. We photographed and documented all evidence. Later, we presented our findings to her for court use, waiving fees in light of her terrible situation. A week later, she showed up at our door again, and what she told us was amazing. She was now living with her parents, a restraining order was in place against her husband, and she was filing for divorce. We had a touching moment of appreciation and relief. It was a reminder of what a difference our work can occasionally make. A team leader in my office couldn't figure something out on Excel and reached out to me. I asked her to email me the spreadsheet so I could examine it firsthand. Instead, she sent me a link to the document on her own desktop. I knew I was in trouble. I could see the headache looming because I knew her well. A straightforward explanation wouldn't register, but I had to attempt anyway. I replied, highlighting that I can't open files on her individual computer and that she should send the file as an attachment. That's when things got ridiculous. She answered, "You can find it on the desktop. If the link doesn't work, just open it." I tried once more, emphasizing that her desktop and mine were 2 separate things.
and I could no more access her files than she could mine. Then things got totally absurd. She reasoned that she's accessed the recycle bin. I have one too. So logically, I should be able to get her files. At this point, I decided to drop formalities. If she's upset, I can handle the backlash. I knew just what to do to explain the problem to her. I excused myself and put on the kitchen tap. Working from home, I knew she could hear it. I got back to my desk and asked, "I've just turned on my tap. Is your sink filling up with water?" The silence, lasting a few good moments, was golden. I could almost hear the gears working overtime in her mind. She finally caught on, expressing her understanding in a nonchalant tone. "All right, that makes sense. I'll attach it and send it over." 2 months ago, into my stint as a small office's systems administrator, we hired Jack. He's an intern with a mom who's friends with the boss's wife. Coming from the wealthiest county in the state, Jack's always had a silver spoon in his mouth, and he acted like it. The moment we met, an air of entitlement clung to him like a week-old sweaty sock. "Jack, meet our, tech guy." My boss struggled to introduce me, typical for someone who rarely uses a computer. Jack reached out to shake hands and said, "Oh, cool, great to meet you." I replied, "Glad to have you on board." He was giddy to start, asking eagerly, "Do I get a business email?" This is where our problems began. I had to tell him, "It'll come eventually. For now, we have an intern group email. I'll get you the details soon." This is typical. Interns usually share an email group at first. Then he switched gears, asking me, "You run the firewall, right?" I replied, "Yes." He asked if I could block and unblock sites. I said, "Yes." His enthusiasm was infectious, but this conversation would come back to haunt me. Boss and Jack headed off for more introductions. Now you might wonder why I'd label Jack as the worst user ever. He seemed polite with a sunny disposition, and he knew a bit about what I do. That's pretty good for most users, but just wait, there's more to the story. As soon as he was out of earshot, Jack began complaining. Apparently, he told the boss he should have his own email to look professional. He claimed that as someone with experience, he was more than a mere intern. There was just one problem. Normally we'd laugh a guy like that off, but the moment that Jack started whining to his mother, that would trickle down the chain and we'd all hear about it. Within an hour, the boss had me setting up a personal email for Jack. Not a promising start for a work relationship. On day 2, I got a ticket from the intern's workspace. The office, filled with computers and printers, is where the interns do their mundane printing jobs. To pass the time, they often play music from Pandora or Spotify. The ticket read, "Hey, we're having issues with Spotify. Not crucial, but help if you can. Thanks." I like these guys, always polite. I found some free time later, went to fix the issue, and Jack observed intently. He asked, "We can use Spotify here?" I said, "Sure." Another intern chimed in, "And Pandora, too?" Problem resolved. I left the interns, including Jack, happier with the return of their music. But then I discovered a note on my desk that left me extremely confused. See, my boss already knew about the music playing. However, he suddenly saw Spotify as a major security threat, perceiving it as a gateway for viruses, malware, and even cyber terrorists. He wasn't pleased with me for allegedly leaving our system vulnerable and demanded I fix it. You'll never guess where he got this insane idea. When I called him to find out who had given him this misinformation about Spotify, the answer was Jack. Trying to correct his misunderstanding, I explained that Spotify wasn't a threat, but then I heard a voice that made my blood boil. It was Jack, interrupting me. He was on speakerphone in the boss's office, saying, "Dude, don't blame me if you didn't know about the security risks." Shocked by this audacity, I was speechless as my boss hung up, still insisting I fix the issue. Over my 4 years working in tech support, I've handled countless calls, but this one guy, well, he was something else. It was the most frustrating yet retrospectively funny call I've ever taken. One calm Saturday morning, he called in. He said he woke up to his family complaining that there's no internet and the TV isn't working either. I told him I would do my best to help him. After he shared his home address, I ran a diagnostic scan. There was zero signal. We had to proceed with some basic troubleshooting. I asked him where the modem was, and if he could tell me which lights were on or blinking. The light to signal that the modem is online was off. I told him I'd have to determine if the modem or the incoming signal was the problem. so I asked him to turn the modem off for 30 seconds. His reaction was incredible. He said no. When I said, "Beg your pardon?" he replied, "That's your job. I'm not touching the modem." Whether he was serious or just joking, I was flabbergasted at how quickly the conversation had shifted. I told him that resetting the modem is the first step in troubleshooting and resolves nearly most of the issues. He told me that he didn't care, he wasn't doing my job, and to send someone. I told him that we typically don't send our technicians to reset a modem. He said, "You will send someone, and you'll also have to answer for the service I haven't received." In the middle of this escalated tension, he took it to the next level. He threatened to complain about me and even showed up at our HQ. His threat made me chuckle because he lived 175 miles away and didn't have a clue what I looked like. By the end of the call, I told him he was welcome to make a 6-hour round trip to our office instead of a 30-second modem reset, and I promptly terminated the call. I reported the threat to my manager, who escalated the matter. I wish I could say the story ended there. Unfortunately, the man managed to contact me again within minutes before I could divert his calls. During this call, he threatened legal action and demanded service cancellation. I responded by informing him of the recorded threat warning and his service termination request, confirming a callback within 2 hours. He didn't attempt to contact me again after that. Later, I found out what happened afterward, and I couldn't believe his nerve. He had indeed taken this matter to court, lost, and ended up having to pay for the rest of his contract. Though his threat was certainly unpleasant, I never took it seriously. Recalling that day still makes me laugh. Imagining him driving 3 hours, inquiring about every woman's name at our headquarters, and then returning home to an internet and TV-less household. What a foolish scenario. Part of my job is supervising a computer lab open to students at my college. Since it's summer as I write this, it's only a light trickle of students. However, a few weeks ago, I encountered the least tech-savvy, most bewildering person I've ever had the challenge to assist. One day, I was manning the help counter when a blonde woman in her mid-20s or so walked in. As she sat down at a computer and shot me a panicked glance, I had a feeling she'd need some help. Predictably, she soon called out loudly, "Hey, I have issues." Yeah, that's putting it lightly. I tried to coax a precise problem out of her, but she insisted I come over to her station. I regretted indulging her as she was waving her mouse wildly at the login screen and asking what to do. Doing my best to be patient, assuming she wasn't computer savvy, I explained that she needed to enter her university username and password on the login screen. It's the same for everything, Wi-Fi, other services, etc. However, she was dissatisfied with this answer. I figured she was upset about the operating system's appearance. We'd recently upgraded to Windows 10, so perhaps she was just unfamiliar. I explained to her about the upgrade, but she kept asking for the university. Despite her complaints, I managed to help her log in. Once logged in, however, she became even more irritated. Noticing her excellent typing, I was confused about her seeming lack of digital skills. She began furiously clicking on random software, getting agitated when university did not magically appear. She clicked on a random icon, opening a graphing software meant for physics students. She was furious about this and yelled at me, even though she was the one who clicked. Mind you, my coworkers were spectating and chuckling while I attempted to assist her. She periodically yelled, "I want university," leaving me utterly perplexed. I guided her to open Google Chrome, which she thought was alien. After eventually coaxing her into opening the default university homepage, she started working, but the nightmare wasn't over. To my chagrin, she was back 10 minutes later, demanding a guest account. Oddly, she kept ignoring my female colleagues and addressing me. When I informed her we didn't provide guest accounts, she expressed concern about others accessing her files. I then had to decode the concept of server-saved files, only to be met with resistance once again. She repeatedly asked for a guest account, and I consistently turned her down. Then things got weirder. In an attempt to win her case, she displayed some cleavage and pleaded for a guest account. My response remained the same: no. Just then, a senior staff member walked in. He suggested using workstations with Windows 7 if she wasn't comfortable with Windows 10. Her response sent me over the edge. She yelled once again, "I want university." I clarified that Windows was an operating system and university made no sense. Fuming, she stomped out. I've thought about this for weeks, trying to figure out what she wanted, and I still haven't deciphered her request. I'm baffled how someone could simultaneously seem computer savvy, yet so lacking in basics. My best guess? Maybe she's a Mac user. I've been steadily climbing the career ladder at my current company. The way I interact with clients is similar to how I treated customers at Starbucks, with kindness, understanding, and empathy. This approach has really helped me build strong relationships with clients. Specifically, there's one mid-sized regional company that I assist with, but they have a dark side. This company offers ambitious individuals the chance to significantly profit at the expense of those who might not have the same strength of will. Let's refer to them as Slime Co. While some of the people at Slime Co. I deal with aren't the most pleasant, many are actually quite nice to me. I show up, do my job without overpromising, and get things done, which differentiates me from the other techs. However, there is one woman at Slime Co. who is an absolute nightmare. Picture the couple from that Kitchen Nightmares episode where the wife is absolutely convinced she can do no wrong and believes everyone is out to get her. That's this woman to a T. She's a constant problem for everyone, and my usual friendly attitude doesn't faze her because in her mind, I'm just out to ruin her life. I generally avoid her as much as possible because I don't have the time or energy to deal with the countless tickets she raises. So, it's the 4th of July and I'm out enjoying my friend's cottage when I get a call at 2 a.m. from a number I don't recognize. I thought it might be an emergency, so I answered it. Big mistake. It started out innocently enough, with me answering the call, a bit sleepy and bewildered. Then I figured out who it was. It was the awful woman from Slime Co. complaining about her persistent laptop issues. When I asked how she got my personal number, she dismissed the question and demanded a fix for her laptop. I told her that I wasn't on call, had no internet access, and Slime Co. was officially closed until Tuesday due to the holiday. However, she didn't even bat an eyelid and kept insisting that I find an internet connection to fix her laptop immediately. It was clear I wasn't going to get anywhere with her, so I told her to submit a ticket and I would handle it. After she hung up on me, I switched my phone to silent and went back to sleep. When I woke up and looked at my phone, my blood ran cold. I had 61 missed calls, 14 voicemails, and over 200 emails from her. I decided to block her number, and the next day, my boss experienced a similar issue with her incessant calls and complaints all night. As a result, a complaint was filed against her and a host of other actions were unleashed. That's when we discovered the twisted truth. An internal investigation revealed that she had gotten my number from the CFO's unattended BlackBerry, which constituted a grave security breach. My boss informed me that we were severing our contract with our company. 2 hours later, we found ourselves with that company's management and our legal teams renegotiating a new contract with added security precautions. Amid all this, they proposed a settlement to me. Their company cut a check to pacify me, placed the horrible woman on probation, gave me a week off on their dime, and released me from providing any further service to them. It wasn't what I anticipated at all, but a welcome resolution nonetheless. I've never been in tech support. No job I've ever had required me to help with tech issues, but life has a funny way of giving you a curveball. As someone who often worked night shifts and spent time with the tech support crew, I became an unofficial tech assistant. This worked out pretty well for the team because they could relax at home during their on-call shifts while I handled minor issues on site. It also gave me something different to do besides my usual desk work. Fast forward a few years, and suddenly everyone's talking about business intelligence, data analysis, and data-driven decisions. These became popular topics in the corporate world, but ironically, none of those tasks were included in my job description. Yet, I found myself dealing with large amounts of data and crafting detailed reports. Call me lazy, but if I have to do the same task twice, I find a way to automate it. My lazy solution was a somewhat organized Power BI dashboard on SharePoint. A mess, but a functional mess. It drastically reduced my team's report generation time from a week to just a few hours each month, which was a major win. Besides my usual duties, I found myself taking on the roles of a business intelligence developer, data analyst, and casual tech assistant. When negotiating my salary hikes, I always pointed out these added responsibilities to justify a higher wage. Yet, Each time, the company would resist my demands, making the whole process rather uncomfortable. Finally, it all came to a head. The company decided they didn't need me anymore, but instead needed someone to maintain the systems I had created. I was told I would be laid off in 60 days. Ensuring everything was in order and ready for my inevitable replacement was my top priority. There was just one problem. They couldn't find a replacement who could handle my unique 3 roles in one situation. On my last day, my boss asked me to delete everything from GitHub due to security concerns. Despite my best efforts to explain the importance of preserving the data for my successor, I was ordered to wipe it. They'd come to regret it. A month after leaving, my old boss called asking for help. They hadn't found a replacement yet and needed help. I agreed to assist, asking only for a steak dinner for my troubles, which were far below the contractors' rate living in the area. A couple of days later, I returned to work and began searching for my backup folder on OneDrive, but it was missing. My former boss informed me that they had deleted it, mistakenly thinking it was unimportant. Those files were the fruit of hundreds of hours of work, and a restart from scratch would simply take too much time. I left the meeting empty-handed without my steak dinner. Days later, they called me again. They asked how much I'd charge them for a new dashboard, as some high-ranking corporate executives overseas were missing the charts for the presentations. That's when I started working my magic. I knew exactly how to get revenge for how they treated me. I pulled out a relatively old version of the Git report that I conveniently had on hand. I didn't mention my lucky find to them, and instead bumped up my hours as if I were starting from scratch. I received a text from a friend telling me that someone they knew needed to replace the broken laptop screen. They already had the new screen, they just needed it installed. So I got in touch with this person and he asked if I could come to his job to fix it. I agreed. However, I needed approval from his employer. Lucky for me, he actually owned the business. The following day, I arrived at his office and he handed me his laptop. He led me to a vacant desk in the accounting section where I successfully replaced the laptop screen. He was in a meeting, so I spent my waiting time in the accounting sector. As I waited, I noticed something. 2 older men were laboring over an Excel spreadsheet. It was a tedious task of reading and calculating vast arrays of numbers, and they'd restarted twice. I decided to step in, ready to revolutionize their workflow. I thought I was about to blow their minds. I was really about to ruin their lives. I introduced myself and showed them how to utilize Excel's automatic calculation feature. I explained that, with this, they could complete a task in minutes that would normally take them hours. Suddenly, amid my training session, I heard a sharp, "You're all fired for incompetence." The company owner had been standing in the doorway eavesdropping. After the shock wore off, he revealed to me, "I've been waiting for that spreadsheet for 2 days. You sorted it out in less than a minute." He courteously handed me $200 and since then has been referring numerous jobs my way. I work at a surgery center, and so does Sandy, an incredibly sweet but somewhat naive older woman who operates the switchboard phones. Let me tell you a story about the time I updated Sandy's computer, and by accident, it made her cry. After I finished work, I told her, "There, it's all set. Any questions about your new computer before I move on to other tasks today?" She asked how to use it. Just to give you some context, it was a hectic day and I'd made the mistake of not providing her with a keyboard or mouse. I decided to make a little joke. I told her, "Actually, these new machines don't need a keyboard or mouse. They connect straight to a harmless neural implant which creates a truly cordless experience. The whole process only takes 45 minutes. You're scheduled with Dr. Smith in operating room 7 at 12:15. At this point, Sandy's eyes widened and she started crying. I totally thought she'd get it was a joke right away, but I was so wrong. I apologized and told her that I'd just forgotten to bring a keyboard or mouse and that the implant was a joke. This event happened a long time ago, but it still tugs at my heart. Thankfully, she calmed down and even found humor in it a few minutes after I clarified it was all a joke. Someone approached me, complaining that they've been moving files for a while and it's only 61% done. I checked it out, and guess what? They weren't transferring any files. They just plugged their video camera into the computer. When I realized what they'd been looking at, I burst out laughing. That 61% was actually the remaining battery charge on the camera. Turns out, they've been watching the battery level drop for hours. I was enjoying a quiet morning before things got hectic, savoring my Dr. Pepper and indulging in a donut. The queue was empty and my email box was silent. As expected though, the silence is broken by my ringing phone. I clear my throat, pick up the receiver, and greet the caller with a cheerful, "Hello, how can I assist you?" The voice on the other end says, "Good morning, my computer can't connect to the internet." Together, we go over some fundamental troubleshooting steps. I ask if the computer has been rebooted, if the cable is connected, if the indicator lights are on, and whether the computer itself is on. Nothing works, so I find myself heading briskly down the corridor to investigate myself. Upon entering the room, I double-check all the things we discussed on the phone. The cable is indeed plugged into the computer, the lights are on but intermittently blinking. Observing this, I start to trace the cable back to its source. The layout of the room is far from ideal, causing the Ethernet cable to be routed all around the room just so the person can't place their desk strategically. Following the cable, I discover it passes through a closet, exits the other side, and connects into the wall jack. I inspect the connection and notice the cable is taut, really taut. I can't shift it even an inch. As the caffeine from my Dr. Pepper begins to kick in, it suddenly clicks. I open the closet. Hanging from the Ethernet cable are several coats, and they're not just lightweight jackets. They're heavy, bulky coats. I hastily remove the coats and explain to the person that an Ethernet cable does not double as a coat rack. After removing the weight from the cable, everything springs back to life and I can finally return to my breakfast in peace. Let me tell you about an incident that happened in a German university where I was working around the year 2000. The physics department was quite well equipped for the students. At the start of the academic year, new student accounts were created by the student supervisors. I played the role of an intermediary between the supervision team and the real tech guys who kept things on track. I ended up being the go-to person for support when the supervisors were stumped. One day, a student named Samantha Melina Butler was directed to me. Samantha was quite good with computers, but she was having weird problems with her account. She could get into her account, but she had some trouble editing certain files. She also found out that she had access to nearly all files in other people's accounts, even including some professors' files. I instructed her to activate her account and I opened a terminal. I examined her files and everything seemed completely normal. She shouldn't have access to other people's files. That's when I noticed it. Her username was her initials, SMB. When I investigated, I realized that the student supervisor had made a major blunder. Simply put, Samantha had obtained all the privileges of the server message block, SMB, because of her username. Every user was part of the group. The supervisor who set it up was not amused when I told him. The HR lady couldn't figure out how to turn on her webcam. I tried to help and suggested unplugging and plugging it back in. She flipped out. She yelled, "I'm not stupid, it's not that." Well, it was that, and it started working immediately. From that point, she was out for revenge. She brought up a mistake that I had made, completely unaware that I was about to humiliate her in front of the whole company. The lesson? Don't mess with tech support. She brought up an incident where our servers were plugged into a fuse box that got overheated and caused a small fire in the wall. It was a super dangerous situation, to be sure, but the servers that my department took care of were not the problem. I knew exactly what to do. I pulled out the report that the firefighters had given me. The report said that the problem wasn't the fuse box was overloaded, it was that someone had stacked a bunch of furniture and boxes in front of it while rearranging the office. I then asked her to remind me exactly who it was who had told the interns to stack boxes right up against an active fuse box. She looked down at the floor while everyone in the room audibly gasped. The vice president had to intervene at that point to stop the humiliation. That is going to bring us to the end of the video on wild tech support tales. If you enjoyed the video, comment below, leave a like rating, and we'll be back with a brand new video very soon.